Okay, so friends, I'm going to start a screen share and you'll let me know if this is adequate and working for you.
That's
Yes?
terrific.
Okay. Many faces, many voices, one heart, one home. Many faces, many voices, one heart, one home. Welcome, welcome, welcome home. Welcome, welcome, welcome home. Many faces, many voices, one heart, one home. Many faces, many voices, one heart, one home. Welcome, welcome, welcome home. Welcome, welcome, welcome home. These words shared with our chevra by the awesome and amazing Rabbi Eli Cohen. The words were written by a friend of his. So friends, welcome to this evening setting the sun on the second to last day of our counting. And I want you to remember, that every sacred act requires summoning. And so let's just take a moment to invite in, to take a few breaths, no matter how busy your day has been, no matter how important your work has been, to just settle in a little bit to the quiet of this moment, so that we're in a place to begin with a bracha. So the word bracha, as you know, we use often, and the word bracha, excuse me, friends, I apologize. I'm having a little bit of trouble. Sorry about that, Mark. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this a little differently.
I can share it for you.
Okay.
There you go.
So, friends, as you know, the bracha is our form of summoning the sacred, of inviting in the sacred. And during these days of the counting of the Omer, we make many brachas, maybe during the day. The rabbis say, by the way, it does not have to be in Hebrew. It doesn't have to be in Aramaic. It should be in the language. If you can do it in Hebrew, wonderful. If not, the language that is best known to you is also acceptable as a way of saying these brachot, these blessings. So each evening we're making the bracha for the counting of the Omer, and perhaps earlier in the day we've made blessings over food, or we've said baruch hu, or we've engaged with this idea of baruching, making a baruch. Now the Hebrew word baruch, our word from the prayer book especially, has two closely related words that it's important for us to understand so that we can have a little bit of a deeper experience. I'm so sorry. So, let me make a little pausela. I'll stop my share.
Chava, I can share it for you. I'm sharing it right now.
Okay, I've got it. Okay. So, Mark, Rabbi Mark, if you could make that full screen, that would be helpful. So the word Baruch, one of its root words, one of its relationship words is the word berech, like your knee. So if you were going to sing head, shoulders, knees and toes, Rosh Kitefayim Berachim Etzbaot, which I cannot reach at this moment. If you were going to, so when we say the word Berakim, we notice that we bend our knee several times during the regular prayer service. We bend at Baruch Hu, we bend at the Amidah, we bend during the Aleinu, and certainly on Yom Kippur, the full body prostration is another expression of this. Could you go on now, Mark, please? It's important to understand from the point of view of deep ecumenism, though I prefer the term spiritual permeability for our sharing, that ours is not the only tradition that embraces this gesture. So chronologically-ish, beginning in the most ancient relationships with the earth, the pagan, the Wiccan, and the indigenous traditions, they also use this technology of kneeling for as an important expression of what? Can you go to the next slide? Why is this person down on his knee? Can you give me a couple of answers? Just popcorn, unmute. Why is this person down on his knee while he's proposing? Why do we do that?
To be humble.
Okay, so humility is one of them. Yes, what else?
It's an act of adoration.
Ah, beautiful. So there's humility and there's adoration. So,
and making it special.
And making it special. This is not something we normally do in day-to-day life, except perhaps to tie a shoe or to reach something on the ground. This is a very particular kind of gesture. Excuse me, I'm going to try to speak English now. And on the next slide, you'll see that what we're dealing with here is anava, humility. The soul trait of humility, anava. So can you just practice saying that? Anava. Let that word form on your own lips. And I'm curious to know if you would write in the chat, and Rabbi Mark or Reb Devorah will help me because I'm unable to read the chat. When you think about the soul trait of humility, what arises for you? And maybe we can just put a few of those in the chat and we can share those if there are words to share.
I wrote surrender.
Surrender. So humility is a form of surrender. Does surrender raise any thoughts for you? What does surrender feel like, look like, sound like for any of you?
For me, it would mean maybe putting the other person first or making room for another person. Like not taking up all the space.
Perfectly said, Mary Rita, and you have presaged exactly where we are going. Mark, on the next slide.
Yeah, we have a couple of other offerings.
I'm
You
sorry.
want me to read them?
Yes,
so,
please.
Oren offers honor and respect. Ellen offers entering sacred space. Meir Appel, knowing you are part of a whole. And Susan, grace.
Let's keep a copy of that list. That's very helpful. Beautiful. Thank you for those teachings. Friends, we have in our literature, our vast Jewish literature, and I'm sure Rabbi Mark has given you many, many teachings from this literature. The literature of Musar, which is the ethical practice in Judaism for cultivating personal virtues. And there are lots of books on this, but all of them agree that one of the most important things in all of those soul traits is anava. So what do we understand by anava? On the next slide, the first thing we understand is that no one is beneath us. This is, I think we're in maybe different places, but that's okay. No one is beneath us. And to be honest, this is a really hard time in the world to not be disdainful, to be judgmental, to not be dismissing of other people, because we can really feel true moral superiority. But the soul trait of anava reminds us, while we may disagree, while we may have very strong feelings of antipathy or sometimes enmity, we also have to remember that no one is beneath us. Every person has within their heart the nikuda tova, a point of goodness. And in some people, like the people who we're sitting with now, that point of goodness shines like a light into the world that we all get to receive with each other. In some people, it is so hidden that we may begin to wonder if it's there at all. And if we were going to name that end of the spectrum, we would be moving toward what is normally identified as evil. When that spark of the divine is so well concealed, so hidden, so unnurtured, we may begin to wonder whether it's there at all. But the trait of anava asks us to remember that even in those people, there is that nikuda tova somewhere. We cannot give up on finding it. The next piece of the soul trait of anava on our next slide is that we can learn something. So Mark, on our next slide, please. Okay, you're a few ahead of me. So if you could go back to the one that says learn something from everyone, please.
That's where we are.
Okay. So the second of the three that I want to share is the soul trait that means there is something to learn from everyone and every circumstance. I was blessed with an amazing father-in-law, not of the Jewish tradition. He was Lutheran. And this is one of the things he taught his children, and that his children pass out into the world as well. And that is, there's something that we can learn from everyone. And there's no place we can be that doesn't have some lesson or depth or insight or challenge to the way that we think about things. So learning from everyone and every circumstance is another piece of anava. That's that receptive energy of grace, bringing it in. And the third one on our next slide, I'm trying to be subtle, is I don't have all the answers. I don't know it all. We have to be open to difference. My way is not the way or the only way. This goes under the broad heading of epistemological humility, and this was the topic of my dissertation. How do we inculcate within ourselves a sense of, I don't know it all? There's a study done on people who get a little bit of knowledge and suddenly believe themselves to be experts. And this is more common than we might realize. And the study is titled, A Little Knowledge is a Dangerous Thing. Because once we learn a little about a subject and feel like we know it all, we fully understand it, we aren't able to really let in new information, different perspectives, other points of view, and it turns out, on our next slide, that epistemological humility is the first of the 10 habits of a peacemaker. This is a wonderful book, would make a great discussion for Moshe, for anyone. The first habit that's listed is this habit of humility. The author says, all of this knowledge that we don't know everything should humble us, but it can be a powerful vehicle for peacemakers because intellectual humility is the first step toward framing conversations in a way that results in positive dialogue. I want to just read you a little bit of that again. This should all humble us that we don't know everything, but it can also be a powerful vehicle for being peacemakers because intellectual humility is the first step toward framing conversations in a way that results in positive dialogue. Mark, can we go off the screen share for just a moment? So, taking into account this idea that intellectual humility, that anava, can create different types of dialogue, and you saw in the title, we're trying to move away from toxic dialogue. When you reflect on where we are in the world right now, where do you see this type of humility showing up? And where are you not seeing it show up so much? Maybe not just for you, but in things that you observe. What do you notice? If it's helpful to raise a hand or more comfortable, that's fine. So where do we not see non-toxic conversation happening in the world?
It's certainly not showing up in the political world right now.
Right, right. And that holds a lot of our attention and energy. That inability to enter into meaningful conversation and living amongst all of this toxicity, how is that affecting you all?
It's devastating.
It's devastating.
It's exhausting.
Boy, is it ever, yeah.
It's actually inspiring me to focus on bringing more love and beauty into the world. And it's helping me set a boundary of not allowing it to capture my attention.
How else is this kind of toxic conversation affecting other people?
I feel like I'm carrying an extra weight inside my gut
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that continues to just be present. And if I feel it, I get into sadness and anger, both.
Indeed. Indeed. Any?
It limits the places where people can think they can feel heard.
Interesting. So, yeah,
Go
where
ahead,
we
Dan.
feel heard and where we feel safe being heard. And Dan, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think in addition to what other people have said, I think it also, because we're human, it pushes us to pick sides and to be defensive and offensive. when we see this sort of communication going on or occurring with us or to us or around us, we feel like we have to defend so-called our side. And so it can bring out the worst in us. It's very hard to say anything positive about what the other person is saying if it comes from this toxic place, even if there are some positive things going on that, from a humble perspective, one might see or agree to. But no, not going to do it, not going to say anything positive. I'm going to have to stick to my guns. So,
One of the saddest things that I have seen in this whole kind of stretch of years that we're living in right now was I walked downtown in our little town and I was going into a restaurant with a friend, and out front there was a car parked, and in the back of the car against the back windshield there was a sign that said, "Elect Trump, make a liberal cry." And this pained me, and despite my friend attempting to urge me away, the owner of the vehicle was getting something out of his car, and I walked over. I'm assuming it was his car, not stolen, because he was wearing all of the gear that would go with that. And I said, "I'm very interested in the sign in the back of your car. Why would you want to make your neighbor cry?" And I said, love your neighbor is a basic value we share. So why would you want to do something to make your neighbor cry? Not so you would win, but so that they would also lose. And I asked a couple more questions, and I finally said, I realized I hadn't introduced myself. I stuck my hand out and I said, "Hi, I'm Chava Bahle." And he looked at my hand and he went, "You're one of them," and turned and walked away. Lunch, and I asked the waitress to write on there, "With love from a non-crying liberal." Never to be seen again. But Dan, you also point out something that's really important, and that is about the function of our brains. There's a space in the brain, a function in the brain by the amygdala. And the amygdala is a very old part of the brain. And its function, its job to keep us alive, is to constantly compare what we're experiencing to whether it is known or unknown. And in the ancient brain, the unknown had to be presumed to be dangerous. So once the amygdala is triggered, that is the root of that us and them vibe. And once that's off to the races, if you don't engage executive function to modulate that response, that's the place from which many, many people, and I would argue the gentleman whose lunch I bought, that's where a lot of people are responding from. That place of a deeply seated us and them, and that creates an inability to be humble enough to be able to have some dialogue. Devorah.
And I think the other impact of this truly is that when things are running a little more smoothly and in balance, we don't have conversations that are consumed by politics. There are many other things in the world that I would like to know about, and I dread opening, especially as a Canadian, I dread opening the American newspapers because I have to get through all that stuff in order to get somewhere else. I get everything online. And it's really become the number one topic in our world, and it doesn't need to take up that much space.
Right. And you've created a perfect transition. Devorah, Rabbi Mark, if you could go back to the screen share on that last soul trait of anava screen. The slide that says anava is also, and many of you have intuited this correctly, awareness of how much space to take up and realizing that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Our creativity, our curiosity, our art, our music are always made better when they are shared and when people have a voice and know when to step forward. When I'm leading the No King's Day rally down on the corner, I know I have to be right out front. But there are also times that staying out front cuts me off from things that would nourish my soul. So knowing how much space to take up is an important quality of this concept of anava, which is related to berakim, our word baruch, knowing how much space to take up. So what we want to try to do is not be the guy on the next slide. And this will tell me your age. If you remember, welcome back, Cotter. Oh. Horseshack, always, always, always. The first guy with his hand up, yelling as loud as he could, pick me, pick me. And what did this do? What did this do to his classmates? How would this have affected his classmates?
Well, one possibility is that it allows them to hide.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
And
So
making it into a competition instead of it might have just been finding a couple of groups instead of
instead of just the Arnold Horseshack show, what other impact do you think this would have on fellow learners?
I don't think they're smart enough to answer.
Right, right. He always has his hands up. He always gets the answer right. I couldn't possibly be as smart as Arnold Horseshack. And I think also, I do, and Devorah, as you're saying that, what's arising for me is it could be very shaming in a way. You know, if you're always the one with your hand up first, you're always the one ready to shout out the answer, it can make other people feel passive, and it can also make them feel minimized, like their presence there doesn't even matter. So this quality of anava related to berakim, the bending of the knee, is one of the pieces we want to draw down from the tree of life. Now, there's a second word that's related to the word bracha, and that's on the next slide. Bracha is also related to the word birkata, which means life-giving waters. Birkata is life-giving waters. So the association here might not be quite as obvious, but if we go on to the next slide that says drawing on nurturing waters, we read from the book of Kohelet, from Ecclesiastes, I shaped pools of water, nurturing a forest of blossoming trees. Take a moment to consider what birkata, might mean in relation to the act of saying Baruch. I shaped pools of water, nurturing a forest of blossoming trees. You'll see the little asterisk after trees, and the hint is that it doesn't just mean the physical trees, this also means the tree of life. So birkata, so we've talked about anava, its relationship to birakim for the word baruch. Another word we look at is birkata, drawing on these nurturing waters to nourish the tree of life itself. So we might consider the idea on our next slide that when I allow myself to flow, to be in shefa, the abundance, the overflow, the plenty, I nourish the tree of life itself in my aliveness. So allowing myself to be in shefa, that is a gesture of receiving. We are then nourishing with the out-breath, the tree of life. We're breathing in and being in receiving mode, the shefa, and then with the out-breath, sending that back out to nourish the tree of life. So, if we can just stop the share for one moment, I just want to ask you for some reactions to unpacking the word bracha in these two dimensions. There are more, but we're just going to do those two.
Well, when I hear about humility and being open to different opinions, it says to me being open to a flow, a fountain of possibilities, an abundance of possibilities. So that's how I would connect it. Yeah.
And what's the relationship between what you just said, which is spot on, brother? What's the relationship for you between that and when we say the word Baruch, Baruch atah, and so forth? How do you make that connection for us?
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking about that, except that when I say a blessing, not necessarily in shul, but in other circumstances, at home or at work or whatever it is, I do feel humility, and I feel an openness. I mean, so to me, they really do go together. It doesn't necessarily work that way in shul and in just a litany of different brachot, but it could. But in other settings, both of those fit perfectly for me. I'm not sure what else you're asking.
No, I was just curious to understand how you'd make that connection. So looking at the Birakim root and the Birkata root, for other people, how does that have an impact on your saying the word Baruch? How will those two associations inform your next Baruch, which is coming up shortly?
Well, I will throw my 2 shekels in here. I think Rabbi Moshe Prager points out in her book Path of Blessings that that berach, that root, also is associated with brecha, which is an oasis or a pool. And so what immediately went to mind with the kneeling and the proposal was kneeling at the pool of blessings. So sometimes we in the renewal world will say, "Blessed are you, fountain of blessings." So as we say a bracha, we know that we're drinking from the greater wealth, the greater source of that which brought everything into this world. How'd I do?
Amen.
Can I get smicha now?
Done.
Thank you.
And I think too, as you're saying that, what's arising for me, and then Ellen, and then Mira, is drinking in, not physically, but drinking in spiritually can't happen if your mouth is already full. So that spaciousness, that stepping back a little bit to gather those waters so that we in turn may nourish the tree of life. Beautiful, beautiful. Rabbi Ellen.
As you were speaking before, it just felt like there was a whole well opening that connected me with the blessing that I will be doing soon. And a softening and a making more space. And, actually major goal for me becoming a resting place for the Shekhinah. And I mean, that's an old tradition, but to get out of my own way enough that I can be someplace where that greatness can land and rest a little and then go on.
And having been in your presence, it is so. It is so. Mira.
That's something similar I was going to say about being a vessel, about allowing this, basically your ego to get out of the way so that you are an open vessel to receive the flow. And that flow, comes with, actually a lot of times I'll feel surprised. They'll be because it's not coming from a rational part of me. So it's like, oh, that's interesting. That's new. So the flow can also be about just taking that in and then being able to follow it is another aspect, but I'm not talking about that.
But the ability to be surprised, the ability to find something new, this is an amazing gift in a word that we use so very often, to step into that word and be able to find something new. I remember when I first read the book that Rabbi Mark mentioned, The Path of Blessing by our holy teacher, Rabbi Marcia Prager. She went into so much depth on just the letter Bet, just the first letter in the book, that I thought, I am never going to be able to finish that word again. I just want to dwell on that, all that she brought forward from the Bet, and that really surprised me, that I wasn't even ready to move on to Aruch, the rest of it, but to just dwell in that beautiful house, that home of the Bet. So if we might return to our screen share, please. Believe it or not, we have finally reached the moment, where we are not counting the Omer, we're going to say the blessing for study. So pay attention to the language here, and pay attention as you read it in the Hebrew or the English, and see how some of these words land for you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. So, what words challenge you in this bracha? And you can do them in the English. What words challenge you there?
Well, for me, and this is not new, I can get my head around Baruch in the different ways that you've said, and but I lose it when I hear Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. It sounds too, what is it, theistic. It sounds to God entity. It sounds different from what I'm trying to do, which is to connect with the midot and the kavanot that mean something to me. The rest of it, Kitshanu is fine, although I don't know what holy means, but I can make up that it means following or trying to attain those midot. And commandments, I like just only in terms of, yes, there is a way to live. There are behaviors that have to go with midot and kavanot. And the rest of it is fine too, to busy
So,
ourselves with Torah.
blessed are you, male, anthropomorphic, externalized, distant deity.
This is what I usually say, yes.
In exactly those words.
Right.
Yeah, so there are any other folks, what if you're riffing off what Dan said or your own idea, what do you find challenging here? And I'm gonna ask you to bracket the word Vitsivanu, the commandment word, because we're gonna save that for a whole other session. There's much to be said.
Yeah.
So other folks, was what Dan said, did that resonate? How did that land, or do you have some other ideas?
Well, the thing that bothers me is the king part. I know it's traditional and I can go along with it, but really I prefer not to use that melech. So
Okay,
ruach is good.
Ruach is awesome. Hold that thought, Reb Devorah.
Okay.
Rabbi Ellen. Oh, I'm sorry, dear heart. Thank you.
Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay. For me, melech used to have such a heavy sting that I just always substituted ruach. But now there are a few times where melech makes sense at moments. And also commandments. I mean, I know there's the other way to look at it as joining. And so I don't use being commanded because that's not the kind of divine relationship that I choose to have or want to have.
Right, right. So the words of the bracha stem, especially for the ones that are Vitsivanu, really hits a lot of post-colonialist buttons, right? So there's a number of ways that might land that is different than it might have landed when the liturgy was created, and this was the understanding of the rule of law. And that is why we refer to Hashem as not just the king, not just the king of kings, but the king of the king of kings. So that model was the model of governance that was common at the time that these words were recorded. So yeah, Mary Rita, take us home.
I probably, if I was saying that, even if I was in a community, I would be saying probably queen, which I do when looking at the spherode. I'll say queendom. That might be weird, but like queen, and the commandments, the commanded. I agree with Ellen. Gets me more than commandments, because I also like some of the other substitutes that you hear of the 10 utterances, or that seem to kind of go down a little bit more smoothly for me. And also for the word Adonai, I probably would use Havaya rather than Adonai.
So,
If I didn't use Shahina and use the feminine.
so I have to tell you how amazing you all are, having such a knowledge base to be able to unpack those. Rabbi Mark, what would you add?
Well, what I want to add to it, my difficult word is ata. And the reason why I say that is because it feels like a chutzpahdik to think that I can enter into an I-thou relationship with whatever we call the G word. That our tradition invites us to a individual and communal relationship with the beloved.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. Martin Buber's book was translated as I and thou. And the word thou in English, and it's not used all that often now, is considered very, very formal language. He didn't say ich und sie, I and thou. He said ich und du, the intimate form that you use with your family, your friends in German. You don't call people you don't know. You don't say du, you say sie. And so that translation actually is a little bit unfortunate on that score. So let's go back to our screen share for a moment and on to our next slide. And we're going to focus in on one of these challenges. And that is the challenge of melech, Malchut, let alone Malchut sheba Malchut. Okay, so I am not sure what forces of the universe conspired to have me be here with you on the one that I struggle with the most. So I feel really lucky because you're going to help me understand this in some new way. Rabbi Marsha Prager, I think, is the source of this teaching. Let's look at the letters of the word melech. They are mem, lamed, kaf. On the next slide, the letter mem. Mem, mother waters, mem, flowing waters, Magid, our spiritual guides, mem, mother waters, mem, flowing waters. That's the gateway into the word melech. And on the next slide, you'll see that if you hum into an oscilloscope, you get this perfect wave, like the waves of the water, even and easy. So mem, these mother waters, smooth and easy, flowing to us, coming into our lives, that is the gateway into this word, or a gateway into this word melech. So the next slide is for the letter lamed. There are two paths that diverged in yellow wood. One that has a little bit of a curve, but one that takes some incredibly unexpected turns. And that path, the one to the right on your screen, looks like the letter lamed. Lamed is the most crooked, physically crooked letter. It's, of course, the letter that starts the word lev, the word heart. But when we think about those mother waters flowing, the next letter, lamed, says all of that is going to flow to you. Sometimes it's going to be on the path you expect, but almost as often, your path is going to take twists and turns that you absolutely were not expecting in any way. So the second aspect of that melech energy is that those mother waters flow to us even on the crooked, unexpected, messy, sometimes wonderful, coincidental, lovely, surprising, scary, sad, all of the ways that our path flows that aren't exactly what we expected. We cannot control that. We cannot control all of the course of those events. And Lamed reminds us that the mother waters flow to us even through those twists and turns. Mem, mother waters, flow to us through the crooked path of our lives. And where do they flow to? That is our next slide. The last letter of the word melech is the letter kaf. Now, it's written in its final form at the end of the word for melech, but in its non-ending form, kaf looks like this. And it's related to where we get the word. So kaf is like a cup. It's like open hands. So the mother waters flowing to us on that crooked path of life into the palms of our open hands. Kaf, it reminds us of a cup. It reminds us of kippah, that same shape, maybe even kepi. So melech can also be understood to mean the mother waters flowing to us through every experience of our lives, which we can receive with open hands. Let's just breathe into that for a moment. Mem, Lamed, Kaf. Tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what you're thinking. Rabbi?
Well, I'm hesitating because it's such a beautiful place you've taken us to, and this is a little bit different direction of the possible meaning for melech, which is as an acronym for moach, lev, where's my liver? Kaved. So we have here Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. The kaved, the liver, is the heaviest organ, so we live with that heaviness and being incarnated in this world. So the only thing that's missing from there is the power, the energy that is infused and flowing through all of that. And for me, it's kind of like that missing one word at the top of Birkat Kohanim, that it's implied. So melech brings us into that awareness that God is within, God is without.
And that's how it flows.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Rabbi Ellen.
It was actually in 1995 when Reb Marcia invited me into the last day of the class she was teaching before the book came out. And it was Melech. And I was so excited by this exact teaching that you've just offered. And at Panay Or, when I used to be there, we would then pour that into our neighbor's hands and go on and pour it and share it around, because the mother waters flowing through the lamed into our open hands and inviting our hands to receive it. And that receiving is so delicious. So thank you for reminding me.
And thank you for affirming for me that that was where I had heard it. I live in a constant state of self-doubt because of my brain injury. Any other reflections on that mother waters, lamed, flowing into kaf, into our open hands? Okay. So, Rabbi Mark, if we could go back to the screen share and skip the next two, but go to the one that is the full sentence of starting when I allow myself. So we'd be skipping 2 slides.
I am not seeing that slide.
Okay. Well, then we won't go there. So here's the affirmation I wanted to offer. When I allow myself to receive Shefa, I am nourishing and being nourished by the cosmic tree of life. Now, one of the challenges with the counting of the Omer, with the depictions of the tree of life, we talk about a right-hand pillar and a left-hand pillar and a central pillar, and Keter as the crown up above, and Malchut, Shekhinah, rooted in the physical world. We have a little problem, and I think the next slide shows our issue with spatial relations. Is that one there? And by spatial relations, I do not mean intimacy on the Challenger shuttle. So let that go. Spatial relations, when it comes to thinking in spirituality, is, I don't want to say it's a great harm, but it does a disservice. We create these languages of left, right, up, down, inward, outward, because that's how, as human beings, we can process and understand space. But our work in doing the counting of the Omer and in nourishing the tree of life is to understand that there's a reason that Rabbi Tirza Firestone named her first memoir with Roots in Heaven. There is a teaching that, in fact, the roots of the tree of life dwell in the celestial realms. And if you can go on to the next slide, we are not at the bottom of the tree of life. We are its fruit. So spatial relations can get a little tricky with the tree of life. But with roots in heaven, we become the fruit of that tree of life. We ourselves are that sweet, nourishing, colorful, beautiful fruit. You know, Oren and Lucinda, part of the year, and I, all year round, live in cherry growing country, and now grape growing country as well. And to look at these trees heavily laden with these beautiful cherries. We have literally gone out into orchards and eaten the fruit, no hands, directly off the tree. So we are that sweetness. We are that metuka, that sweetness like we have in delicious fruits, their colors, and you know, we don't have them all year round. So they're special when they're seasonal. And so are we. When we are in our seasons, we are special in the same way. I also want to mention, just from, again, the point of view of spiritual permeability, Judaism is not the only tradition that talks about with roots in heaven. In the Hindu tradition, there's a teaching that says the material world is likened to an upside down sacred fig tree. On the branches of this mysterious tree, says the text in the Bhagavad Gita, the embodied souls wander up and down from lifetime to lifetime. So it's not only in our tradition, this recognition of some of the challenge of the spatial relation, but also the idea that we are its fruit. So, rest on that slide for a moment. And I want to come to the question that we were asked on page 108 of our workbooks this week for Malchut Sheba Malchut. How is it possible for us to experience the presence of God? Particularly if we're thinking male, anthropomorphic, externalized, monarchical, distant deity. How is it possible for us to ever have a direct experience? And here's how. Shekhinah na 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 na. Shekhinah na 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 na. Shekhinah na 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 na. Shekhinah na 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 na. And give us your light to find light within us, to illumine the pathway to you. And give us your light to find light within us, to illumine the pathway to you. Mark, if you can skip to the first Shekhinah slide. It is the Divine Mother. That's what's inside the Malchut Sheba Malchut. We experience that divine, nurturing mother. Next slide. Her other characteristics include compassion and comfort. When the Jewish people have wandered, when we have been lost, when we have been in exile, it is the Shekhinah who dwells with us, travels with us, comforts us. And she also, on the next slide, the earthly connection, the Shekhinah is close, felt, physically present in the world to sustain life. And finally, Shekhinah, on the next slide, is also known as the protective shelter. We talk about under the wings of Shekhinah or the Shekhinah, spiritual shelter, safety, and welcoming warmth. So friends, we have indeed come full circle. Welcome home. And Rabbi Mark will now lead us in the bracha for Shekhinah Sheb Shekhinah, Malchut Sheb Malchut, as the sun is setting on this day.
L'shem yichud kutshabrichu u'shechintei hineni muchan u'mezuman l'kayem mitzvat aseh shel sfirat ha'omer shel sfirat ha'omer shel sfirat ha'omer shel sfirat ha'omer. Sheva Shabbatot Timimotiena Sheva Shabbatot Timimotiena Ay 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 yala ay 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 Shel Sfirata Omer Shel Sfirata Omer Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer al sfirat ha'omer al sfirat ha'omer al sfirat ha'omer. Rabbi Chava, will you do us the honors? You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hayom Tisha v'arba'im yom shehem Shavuot la'Omer. Today is 49 days, which is 7 complete weeks of the Omer.
So now everyone where you are, say the day for yourself. I'll say it with you. Hayom Tisha v'arba'im yom shehem Shiv'a Shavuot la'Omer. Today is the end of our Omer journey, which, as Alice says, when you've come to the end, you've only come to part of the beginning. To Malchut Sheba Malchut, Shekhinah Sheba Shekhinah. Yai lai rai 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 rai, yara rai 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 rai, yara rai 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 rai, yara rai 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 rai. Thanks to Reb Chava for her leading us and guiding us tonight in this delicious journey, taking us to the end of our counting. And thanks to all of you who joined us with your holy presence. And I will stop singing now, so Reb Dr. Chava, you can have the last word.
Friends, what is arising in my heart is to acknowledge with you that I don't do this type of teaching very much anymore. Haven't been able to. And we are so blessed to have a rabbi who understands he could have done every single week, and he would have done it brilliantly, perfectly, and for this week, probably much better than this. But our rabbi knows enough to make a little space to allow voices to come forward. And for this, I am very, very grateful. So I want you to just take one moment to journey over the last hour and 14 minutes of your life. Beginning with that welcome home, traveling through our baruchs, the flow of life, understanding, unpacking that, recognizing that we are the tree, the fruit of the tree of life, the many, many insights that every single one of you has brought here with your presence. And of course, closing with the blessing for the day that now begins. So I'll ask if you're willing, if you take that journey, can you allow a word or two of blessing to arise, to speak into this community, because what arises for you is exactly what somebody else here needs to hear. So if you would rather not do that, you can stay muted. If you are willing to, able to, want to speak those words of blessing into this Kliya Kodesh, this sacred container, please unmute yourself and share the words that arose for you, because they're for us too.
Shekhinah presence is reality, and it is present now in each of us and in this community.
Mira.
I had 3 words: sweet expansiveness, a sweet expansive flow.
Thank you.
How do you put a hand up? Do you know how you put your hand up?
Oren and Lucinda.
Open heart.
Devorla, Reb Devorla.
As we watch the sunset, let's take the peace of the beauty that before us with us into this day.
Reb Ellen.
And by the merit of this wonderful counting and leading up to the counting, there is so much flow of magnificence and blessing that streams out, clearings and wonders. So may we all receive that.
Dan.
Humility with openness, and also a new understanding and possibilities for the word melech or Malchut.
Any other blessing words that you'd like to speak? So take these in, friends, carry them with you, the ones that are spoken and the unspoken ones. And I will look forward to seeing some of you as we enter into what in some ways is the culmination of this magnificent journey with Shavuot. So Rabbi Mark, thank you for having us in your home.
Thank you, Reb Chava.